All right, so welcome everyone holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. Again, I want to welcome everyone holding by Book of Leviticus Chapter 16, verse 8, and we're still speaking about the two he-goats, right? The Torah tells me there's one that's going to get sacrificed, one is going to go to Azazael. So we've been speaking about what Azazel is, what it represents. So the Torah tells me, again, chapter 16, Book of Leviticus, verse 8. And that is, Torah says, Nasan Aaron, al Shnei Aseirim, Korolois, Korechad Lashem, Korechad Lazazel. As we said, Aaron is going to place two lots, right? There are two lots. One, the two he-goats, one lot to Hashem, and one lot to Azazel. So we said before, as the Ramban Nachmanides said, there is one that's going to get sacrificed, right? I.e., the one that is Hashem, and the other is going to get thrown off a cliff, not a sacrifice, right? The one that's called to Azazel. Now, obviously, if it would be, if we would say it's going to go to the name of Azazel, what does that sound like? Sounds like idolatry, right? So obviously it can't be idolatry. That the Ramban spelled out, and that's, that the Ramban spelled out, and we saw from the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, from the Orach Chaim, mentioned a few weeks back that Mr. S, right on Yom Kippur, has to be given a shochat, has to be given a bribe, so to speak. So we sort of spoke about that. We're gonna see that again. We're gonna see that again now. So the Rabbeinu Bachai comes along, the Rabbeinu Bachai, and the Rabbeinu Bachai based on the Ramban. Based on the Ramban, says there are two goats. There are two goats over here. One is going to be for Kodesh Baruch Hu. One is going to be for God, so to speak. One is going to be to Azazel, right? As we mentioned, one is going to be to Azazel, and it's going to be a girl. It's going to be lots that are drawn. Right? So here the Rebbeinu Bachai says it's a gift to God. Right? Obviously, one sacrifice. One's going to be sacrificed, the other thrown off a cliff, but it's a gift to God over here. Right? Because before the girl, before the lots are drawn, so to speak, and you have after the girl, and what happens afterwards? Because before the lots are drawn, what does the Torah tell me? It says you're going to stand in front of God. You're going to stand them in front of God. Now, why? Why is that going to be the case? Why are you going to stand them right in front of God? That's going to be later. Right? It's going to be, I think, verse 10. Let me just check here. Yeah, you're going to stand them in front of God. Right? That's what we're going to see. Right, the one that goes to Azazel is going to be for God. It's going to atone. Okay, so here the Rebbeinu Bachai, right, says the Rebbeinu Bachai, the first, what does it mean before the girl? Before the lots are drawn. It means it's going to stand in front of God. Now, $1.5 million question, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean it's in front of God? Right, says Rebbeinu Bachai, in order to explain, says both of them are going to be a gift to God, and they're going to stand in front of Him. Both of these goats are going to stand in front of Him, and then you're going to have to after the girl, right? What does it mean after the lots are drawn? And that is that the Torah tells me in verse 10, Torah tells me this goat that the lot falls is going to go to Azazel. It's going to stand alive. It's going to stand alive in front of God. Meaning that even that for Azazel is going to be given to God. Right? As we saw explained by the Ramban, right? Because we mentioned before, right? What does the Torah tell me? The Torah tells me that there are two goats. One is to Hashem, one is to Azazel. Azazel cannot be an angel, right? I don't know where people get this translation from. It's not an angel. It's a goat, right? It's a goat over here. You can't sacrifice to an angel, right? Even you're going to say, wow, this one's to Azazel, right? Doesn't mean it's for idolatry. It can't be for idolatry. 100% it cannot be idolatry. We're going to see. That's forbidden. It's a gift to God. How can it be a gift to someone else? Right? If this goat's going to be a gift, i.e., to quote unquote Azazel, doesn't that sound like idolatry? Sounds like idolatry. Right? One is going to God, one is going to Hashem, one is going to Azazel. But if you say Azazel is, I don't know, fallen angel, an angel, what doesn't have to be a fallen angel, no such thing. Right? We in Judaism don't believe in fallen angel. Right? An angel doesn't have free will. 100%, an angel does not have free will. So if an angel doesn't have free will, it can't be to an angel over here. That's idolatry. Even if you tell me an angel is controlled by God, an angel is only a messenger. An angel is only a messenger. So if the angel is only a messenger, then what would I say? The messenger can only do certain things. Can only do certain things. Give an example. There were three people dressed up like Arabs, or they look like Arabs, let's say. By Abraham, three angels came. Right? The Rashi says they were angels. Why did they come? They came because each one had its own specific message. One angel came to overthrow Sodom. One angel came to heal Abraham. Third angel came to tell him he's going to have a child. Right? Tell him he's going to have a child. So there were three angels. What do I learn out from here? What do I learn out from Rashi? As the Ramchal says, Ramosh Chaim Lutzato, blessed memory. Right? He brings down the Derech Hashem in the way of God. Angels, as we mentioned, don't have free will. 100% they don't have free will. So therefore, they're messengers. But what do I learn out? What do I learn out specifically here? I learn out specifically they can't do more than one task. They can't multitask. The angels come and do what they need to do. In other words, one's going to overthrow Sodom. That's what it's going to do. And then it'll go back and whatever its next thing it has to do, that's what it'll do. Its next task, let's say. Right? The one who's going to heal Abraham, okay. So even though he's going to get healed, what's going to happen afterwards? We get another task. He's a messenger, right? Spiritual forces, without going too much, into that. I don't want to get sidetracked here. But spiritual forces are limited. They're limited. They can only do certain things. Mr. S, we'll call him the angel of death, the evil inclination. We're going to speak about him also. So the angel of death, can he kill whenever he wants? No. How do I know? What's the obvious proof? Job. Book of Job. That's the obvious proof. Because God says, okay, you can do what you want to my servant Job. You can test him and all that. You can't kill him. You're not allowed to kill him. Right? That's what it says in the book of Job. So therefore what? Therefore he can't do whatever he wants. Right? The angel of death is limited. So if someone's going to die, God's going to say, okay, take him. Now's the time for the person to die. Otherwise, wouldn't be able to take him. 100% not allowed. Why? Again, an angel is a messenger. A messenger does what it's told. That means it doesn't have free will. Right? Just like in the physical world, there are physical things do not have free will. Animals don't have free will. Right? They're programmed DNA. They can choose if they want to eat, not eat, whatever, but they don't have free will like we do. They don't make decisions like we do. Right? Kaufman's language, they're programmed. They're programmed DNA. Angels, same thing, just in spiritual terms. Right? So the Ramchal speaks over there about spiritual entities, and how they function to a certain extent. But make no mistake, they don't do what they want. They don't have free will. So if they don't have free will, could it be, let's say, you have an angel controlling the winds, an angel controlling the Atlantic Ocean. And both say, you know what? Let's make an earthquake. We'll put Atlas back on the map. We'll destroy half of Southeast Asia. We'll make a tsunami. So if God says, okay, not a problem, go ahead. So they could do it. They have the power to do it. If, let's say, God says, nay, God says, nope, not going to happen. What's going to happen over here? Nothing. They can huff, they can puff. They can't do anything, right? They can't do anything. So they're stuck, right? They're stuck. So plants, animals, trees, birds, even if someone's reincarnated in them, they don't have free will. They're programmed DNA, 100% programmed DNA. So even if a person would sacrifice to an angel and say, well, God's too lofty, God's, busy dealing with black holes and all kinds of other things, he doesn't have time for us. So it's the power of God. I mean, isn't it true? God controls them, but God's too lofty. So what will he do? Obviously they should be worshipped also. So people make that mistake. Not allowed to worship angels. Because where do they have power from? They only have power from God. Right? Very foreign concept to Judaism. This idea of a fallen angel. Can't happen. They don't have free will. 100% they don't have free will. Right? See, that's why the Christians a lot of times will mistranslate what the Torah says. So if you look at Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7, it says over there, God created good and evil. You're going to say God is evil? No. We're not saying God is evil. God allows evil to exist. God allows it. Right? So if he allows it to exist, he allows people to make good decisions, bad decisions. That's what he does. Doesn't mean he's evil. Right? So why did he create it? To give us free choice. Because if we do the wrong thing and we get zapped every single time we do the wrong thing, well, we're not going to have free choice, are we? So we're the only being in the world that has free choice. We can make decisions, good decisions, bad decisions. There are repercussions. 100% there are repercussions. Regardless, if a person's going to say, oh, look, he's an angel. Could be a fallen angel. First of all, we don't believe he's an angel. Right? Someone who asks, is the God of the Egyptians? No idea. Maybe he is. Maybe the Azazael is. By us, not an angel. Says it's a goat. Torah tells me it's a goat that's going to get thrown off a cliff. That's what the Torah says. Right? I read it in English. That's what the Torah says. Now, that being the case, even if I would say, which the Ramban already addresses, which the Rabbeinu Bachai is going to echo, he's going to say the same thing. Based on the Ramban. You cannot say, as the Torah here tells me, you cannot say, Gor Echad Lashem, Gor Echad Lazazel. The Torah says it's a lot to Hashem, and a lot is going to be for Azazel. Now, it cannot be to Azazel. Sounds like idolatry. Right? If you're telling me Azazel is an angel, or something else, whatever it is, right? You're going to say, oh, it's for idolatry. That can't be. Right? Idolatry, very, very big sin over here for the Jewish people. Many, many times. The Torah says, can't make idols, can't bow down to idols, can't keep idols in your house, right? A lot of things the Torah says bad, for idolatry, right? So here, what does Rabbeinu Bachai say? He says, this thing, this Azazel, this goat, is given to God. But it's not a sacrifice. If it's not a sacrifice, how's it given to God? Because he's thrown off a cliff. You know why it's not a sacrifice? We brought down before, right? We brought down before from the Orthodox HaKadosh, because he brings down a verse in Mishlei, brings down a verse in Proverbs. Says King Solomon, chapter 21, verse 27. How do I know it can't be a sacrifice? Can't be a sacrifice because the person giving it is evil. And if he's evil and he's done things wrong, evil people don't give sacrifices. Why? Because King Solomon says, Zevach Rashaim Toeva. Sacrifice to someone who's evil is an abomination. So it can't be a sacrifice. Right? It'll never be a sacrifice. It's one to Azazel gets thrown off the cliff. Right? He gets taken out to the desert, and it falls off a cliff. Right? But that's also, says the Rebbeinu Bachai, now interesting question. Because it says it's also going to be given a God. But we know the other sacrifice is a chatas, right? Is a sin offering. So that I understand is going to atone. Right? That's only going to atone. But Azazel is also going to atone. Right? So you're going to say, well, how does that work? It's not a sacrifice. Because not being sacrificed up, right? Not being brought on the altar, being thrown off a cliff, but it's still given to God over here, right? In other words, the whole point over here, the Ramban says, as Rabbeinu Bachai is learning, is that why do you have this Azazel? It's given to God. Because what's our only intention? What's our only intention with either one of these? Is to do what God wants. It's to do what we call Ratzon Hashem. To do what he wants. So if it's going to be used for atonement, okay. It's going to be used for atonement, as we're going to see, but it's not sacrificed. It says Or Chaim HaKadosh can't be sacrificed. We already have a sin offering. This is not going to be sacrificed. Why? Because we just said, as it says in Proverbs chapter 21, verse 27, the sacrifice of evil people is disgusting. Let's translate better. It's an abomination. God's not going to take an abomination. So it says, so then Rabbeinu Bachai continues, and he says, but it tells me the goats is going to be for the sake of God, right? We're going to see the Aramaic translation. It says, L'shem Hashem, for God's sake. Doesn't say that by Azazel. Doesn't say the name of Azazel. Why? Why doesn't he translate the same as, B'shem Hashem, for the sake of God? Because if it would be for the sake of God, doesn't sound like a different God. Right? If you would say L'shem Azazel, for the name of Azazel, that sounds like another God. Can't be another God. Right? It's God, as the Torah says, Exodus chapter 20, there'll be no other gods before me. One of the 10 commandments. God's a jealous God. So it can't be a God over here. Can't be an angel. That'd be idolatry. So says the Rebbeinu Bachai, and he explains in the Parsha, says the Rebbeinu Bachai that this goat's going to go for God. What's going to happen? Going to die. It's going to be ritually slaughtered. It's going to be shechted. How do I know? Because it says in verse 9. Right? What does it say in verse 9? It says in verse 9, we'll get there. It's next verse. I don't think we'll get there today. But it says Aaron's going to bring this goat that was sacrificed. That was used as lots before God, and it's going to be a chatas. What does a chatas mean? Sin offering. So that goat's going to be killed. It's going to go up on the altar, the sin offering. How do I know? It says Rebbeinu Bachai, next verse. Next verse. That's what it tells me. But what about the goats that goes to Azazel? What about the goats for that? It's not going to be killed. Right? Ben Bachai says it's not going to be ritually slaughtered over here. It's going to be sent out up in Midbar, on the face of the desert. That's where it's going to go. So now he makes the comparison. He makes the comparison, just like someone who has saras, right? What is saras? People translate as leprosy. It's a spiritual disease for someone who got lashon hara. Right? Sorry, for someone who spoke lashon hara. They got these spots, on their arm, on their clothing, maybe on their house. They had to be sent outside the camp. Now, I'll mention one thing. Spoke a lot about saras. He spoke a lot about it. You go back, look at all those classes on, we spoke about saras. But we'll mention one thing, and probably the most important thing about saras is that no matter what they did, what doctors came, tried this healing, that healing, all kinds of other things to try and heal the person, right? What was the only thing that healed the person? Only thing that healed the person was repentance. That's it, right? Nothing else. They tried, I don't know. They were macrobiotic, that didn't help. Acupuncture, that didn't help. All these things they tried. Herbal medicines, normal medicines, they did all these things. Guess what? Unless the person fully repented, it never went away. Right? This saras never went away. Now, so what's the connection? What's the connection over here? It says, you're going to send this goat. Where's the goat going to go? In the face of the desert. You're going to send it out. It's going to go, it's going to go off this cliff. Joe, so why do I mention all this about saras? He says, just like the reason for the Mitzorah is the one who got saras. He's the one that gets the spiritual disease, right? If that manifests, now it's an interesting thing. Person spoke lashon hara, spoke badly against someone else when it's 100% forbidden. When it's 100% forbidden, right? So what happened? They got these spots, got it either on their on their body, on their clothing, on their house, whatever it was. And it's an interesting thing because they did something wrong spiritually, even though it's a physical thing, meaning they spoke badly against someone else. Now, I'll just mention one thing about lashon hara. If someone transgresses, normally if someone does a transgression, whatever the transgression is, normally you have something in your hands. Meaning, a person, let's say they stole. They stole from someone else. What do I have? I have what I stole. I mean, not me. Someone else has what they stole. Whether they did it in hiding, they beat the person up and took it, whatever it is. If a person, God forbid, killed somebody or did something else, they've done something. They have something in their hand. They've got benefit from what they've done. Person who speaks lashon hara, even if it's true, if they speak badly against somebody else. Now, what do? 100% it could be true. But why is someone speaking badly against someone else? To make themselves look better. But you don't have anything tangible. Let's say, whatever you say is not going to get back to the person. So, since it's not going to get back to the person, it's not going to cause them livelihood issues. It's not going to cause them to lose their job. Right? It's not going to cause them other issues. Not going to cause them any problems, let's say. So what did you do wrong? Right? It's still forbidden, but guess what? I don't have any tangible benefit. That's what it means to have something in my hand. I don't have any tangible benefit. I don't have money in my hand. I don't have money in the bank, right? You stepped on somebody to make yourself look better, right? So it boggles the mind. So why is that such a severe prohibition? Because as the Chofetz Chaim says in the laws of lashon hara, right? The Chofetz Chaim says it kills 3 people. Who is it killed? The person who said it, the person who heard it, and the person who was said against. Now, the person who said it gets more than 30 prohibitions in one shot. Now, the person who heard it, you're going to say, wow, what was I supposed to do? I was there. I didn't ask this person to speak lashon hara. But if a person believed it, 100%, they transgress. So the person will ask, so what do? right? This comes up a lot. People will say, listen, I'm at work, wherever, and I hear people speaking badly against others, or even better, you hear the news, right? You're going to say, what's so bad about hearing the news? Forget about it's depressing. How many people get killed and there all kinds of terrible things going on in the world. But that's not the worst part. Why isn't the worst part? Because it's all Lashon Hara. It's all, they're telling it over. They're not just giving over the news. However, that would be the case. They're not just giving over what happened. They're giving their slant. Like, we really care what they think. Like, who cares what they think? They all could happen because of this. All could happen because of that. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry puts their spin on what happened. I really care what they think. Person died. Person was killed. Maybe it was cold blood. Maybe this. Maybe that. Could be happening for any reason, any number of reasons. Maybe they got it right. Maybe. But he listened to the news. All Lashon Hara. Now, someone says, I heard something. I know it's Lashon Hara. What do I do now? But first of all, you can't believe it. You can't believe it 100%. Now, what if it's true? What if it's been verified? Right? What 100% has been verified? Right? If it's been verified, we know it to be true. Even if we know it to be true, I'm still not allowed to repeat it. I'm not allowed to believe it 100%. If it's something that potentially could damage me, I have to look out for myself, right? I'm allowed to guard myself against such a person for whatever it is, but I still can't believe it 100%. Not allowed to believe it 100%. Now, this question comes up. What about non-Jews? Does this affect non-Jews? So Lashon Hara doesn't affect non-Jews. In other words, non-Jews want to speak Lashon Hara all day long. They're allowed to. It's not something that, I asked my Rebbe once this question. Am I allowed to teach non-Jews the laws of Lashon Hara? And he said, no. What do you mean, no? I said, shouldn't they learn it also? He says, no. Why? Because non-Jews have to keep laws. They have to keep laws that are logical. That makes sense. That makes sense according to the Torah. This, if you'd ask anybody about the laws of Lashon Hara, right? If you would ask anybody, Jew or non-Jew, I know something to be true. It's all over the internet. It's in the papers. Let's say, for argument's sake, it's been proven. And it's been proven 100%. It's been proven to be true. Okay? Now, tell that person, unless it meets certain criteria, they're not allowed to repeat it just for no reason. So everybody's going to jump up and down and say, what are you off your cotton picking head? It doesn't make any sense. Everybody knows it. It's fact. And let's say, for argument's sake, it is. Because not everything what they say is fact is really fact. But let's say, right, I'll give the Holy New York Times their day. Let's say they actually told the truth. Okay. So they told the truth once in their life. Good. But now that being the case, who says I'm allowed to repeat it for no reason? I'm not allowed to repeat it for no reason. Everybody knows it to be true. Okay? Doesn't matter. Says the Chofetz Chaim, there are certain conditions. There's certain criteria that you're allowed to repeat it. But you have to fit that criteria. And the Chofetz Chaim says, just while I'll mention that, the Chofetz Chaim says over there that even though you might reach all the criteria, and there are a number of conditions, still shouldn't repeat it. 100% you still shouldn't repeat it. Even if you're going to reach it, you reach all that criteria. Why? Because it's very tricky over here. Very, very tricky, these criteria. You have to hurt it yourself, not secondhand, right? It's got to be 100%, when you give it over, you can't change any of the details, right? Whatever, there are a number of criteria. So now, if I were to take a survey, Jews, non-Jews, doesn't matter. And I would say, okay, you know something to be true. We know it's been proven. 100% has been proven. Now, would you say that you're allowed to repeat it? But let's say again, everybody knows it's true. 100% it's true. We're going to make it very easy. So if everybody knows it's true, everyone's going to say it should be 100%. Everyone should say, of course I'm allowed to repeat it. Everybody knows it's true. Comes on the Chofetz Chaim and says, no, you got to meet certain criteria. That, for non-Jews, would make no sense at all. Now, secular Jews could say that makes no sense at all. Too bad. They're bound by the Torah. They got to keep what it says. Right? They got to keep it. They can say it doesn't make sense as much as they want. Okay? 80% or more of the Torah doesn't make sense. Logically. Now, comes back to Rabbeinu Bachai. So Rabbeinu Bachai says, okay, we're going to send this goat to the desert on the face of the desert. So too, like the birds of the Mitzorah. What's the Mitzorah? The Mitzorah is someone who got saras. Right? It's an acronym. What's the acronym for Mitzorah? Motzei Shemra. Right? There are 3 words here. Motzei Shemra. 3 words, right? Motzei Shemra. You're bringing about evil speech on someone else. Right? That's called libel. We call that libel in the vernacular. So what do we say? So says the Rabbeinu Bachai. Rabbeinu Bachai says, but what about the birds of the Mitzorah? They also are sent over the face of the field. Right? As it's brought down, chapter 14, verse 7. Right? And you got to see the Ramban over there. At the end of verse 4. But we spoke a lot about that as well. Nonetheless, what's the purpose? You send it over the face of the fields, and then, whoever's in charge of the desert, we're going to speak about also. They're going to come and, take this bird, and that'll be an atonement for the one who spoke Lashon Hara for this saras, that got saras. So too, says the Rebbeinu Bachai, so too by Egor Rufa. What's the Egor Rufa? That a person was killed, right? A person was murdered, and they take this, not a goat, it's a calf. They take a calf and they break its neck, and the rabbis say, we don't have anything to do with this death, for the city or whatever. They take this calf and it goes to this, then they throw it over this wadi, not a wadi, but I don't know, whatever it's called. I'll think of it in a second. But whatever, they throw it over, a creek or whatever, and they kill it, right? They give it to the one who's in charge. Let's say this angel, who's in charge, let's say of the desert or this creek or whatever it is, right? And it has to be a place where it's never been worked, land's never been worked, never been seeded, never been plowed, planted, whatever. So it says a similarity, just like the calf gets thrown out over here, just like the bird thrown over the fields, right? Thrown out to the fields. So too this goat goes to Azazel. Now let's make clear, says the Rabbeinu Bachai. And he says, so what's the point of what the Torah here says? That you're not giving a sacrifice. Let's repeat that. You're not giving a sacrifice to Azazel, God forbid. Right? Says it black and white. Quoting from the Ramban. Why don't you give a sacrifice to Azazel? What do we call that in the vernacular? Idolatry. And even if I would say this would apply to non-Jews for Noahide, which it doesn't, right? 100% it wouldn't do it. It wouldn't apply because it's on Yom Kippur. This is talking about Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur doesn't apply to non-Jews in general. So here he says, what? You're going to sacrifice it to Azazel? right? You're going to sacrifice it to another deity or to an angel or whatever. He says, God forbid. The intention of the Torah, he says, is not that. You're not bringing the sacrifice over here. That's idolatry. Why? Because when a person prays, Jew or non-Jew, doesn't really matter. We're not going to discriminate over here. Person prays, where's his prayers going? Who's he praying to? He says he's only praying to God himself. Right? Why? Because it's brought down, Book of Exodus Chapter 22, verse 19. It says the sacrifice going to God. Who's it going to? Exclusively to God himself. Not going anywhere else. Only going to him. And if a person, God forbid, had intention to give it over to an intermediary, meaning they're sacrificing to a, for lack of a better term, an intermediary, someone that has no power in and of itself, right? Because only got power from God, doesn't matter. You know, if it's to a tree, it's to a plant, it's to the stars, to the moon, to a planet, anything that doesn't have power in and of itself, God's not going to accept that sacrifice. That sacrifice not going to be accepted, right? In other words, we pray straight to God, Jews and non-Jews. We don't need an intermediary, right? We don't need anyone who, quote unquote, came and died for our sins. We don't need that. We can have a direct connection to God. So therefore, when a person prays, says Rabbeinu B'chai, where does it go? Straight to God. No intermediaries. God doesn't accept it. That's idolatry. Right? And from the Or Chaim HaKadosh, he says, don't we know sacrifices from evil people is an abomination? As we quoted before, Proverbs chapter 21, verse 27. So therefore, you're going to sacrifice to an intermediary. What does King Solomon say in Proverbs? God ain't going to take it. Right? That's not going to be accepted. Not going to be acceptable. Why? Big I. It's called idolatry. Forbidden for non-Jews also. No intermediaries. That's an abomination. Not even a sacrifice. It's an abomination. And he says, and that's what it means by all the sacrifices. All the sacrifices Jews are obligated to do. When they sacrifice it, who are they sacrificing to? They're sacrificing to none other than God himself. They're not sacrificing to anyone else. Do you sacrifice to anything else? Idolatry. You tell me God's too busy. He's running through black holes. He's trying to, get Pluto reinstated as a planet, right? He's doing all these other things. He doesn't want to deal with us because we're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. Came from a city or a town, in a city, in a state, in a country, on a continent, in a planet. We're getting smaller. In a galaxy, we're getting smaller. You really think, these people are going to say, you really think God cares? He cares if God, if a Jew's going to rip toilet paper on Shabbos? You really think he cares about that? He's too busy doing other things. Why is he going to have what to do with us? So he gives these other things power, right? Might make sense in some ways logically, right? Because God is all powerful. He needs us. He needs us to pray. He needs us to say, I want to tell you how great those rings are in Saturn. God's like, thank you very much. In the Psalms, you want to say, that we say every day, the beauty of the snow, and rain and what rain does and, all these different things of nature. God's like, thank you very much. You say, Mars, you understand, this red planet, you did all these things. God's like, what do you think? I need you to tell me this? What, I'm a sycophant, good SAT word. What do you think? I need you to bow down to me? Of course I created the world. I did everything. So why does he want us to say these things? Not for him. God's not lacking anything. It's the first of the 13 principles of faith. God is absolute, says the Rambam. God doesn't change. Right? God is not fickle. Right? Morality is not relative. Right? So if that's the case, God needs me to pray to him. What does he need it for? Right? God's got a big ego, or as we say here in Israel, it's got a big ego. He's got a huge ego. He needs me to say how great he is. He doesn't need that. He doesn't need that. Says Rav Chaim of Volozhin. Rav Chaim of Volozhin, the famous student of the Vilna Gaon, born 250 years ago, and he wrote an epic work called Nefesh HaChaim, literally the soul of life. What does he say at the very beginning? A lot of it's beginning no one learns because a lot of it's steeped in Kabbalah, right? But what does he say at the beginning? He says, don't think your actions don't matter. Don't think God doesn't care what you do, doesn't care what you think. Actions have repercussions. Actions have repercussions in this world. They have repercussions in the spiritual world. The Ramchal and Derech Hashem we mentioned before, right, goes into detail a little bit, explaining how my action right now can have an effect. Let's say a person does something now, good or bad. So God's going to judge at that split second. It's a physical action. It's going to get judged physically, spiritually. And then it's going to go upstairs, it's going to come back down in this world, however that works. And it's going to have physical and spiritual ramifications. I'll give an example. Because, saying the words, you're going to say, come on, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So we'll try and make sense. If, what do we mean? There are repercussions for our actions physically and spiritually. Physically, let's say a woman's pregnant and a woman smokes crack while she's pregnant. Now, what is the end result? What is probably going to be the end result? The end result is that child will come out deformed. Is it the child's fault? No. But there are repercussions for your actions. Now, let's say a Jew is with somebody intimately they're not allowed to be with. This woman gets pregnant, doesn't mean, and they have a child, right? This woman has a child. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they're both married. And they have a child, and this child's called a mamzer. Now, some people translate it as a bastard child. It's a child from a forbidden relationship. Right? It's a forbidden relationship, someone they're not allowed to be with. Now, that being the case, who is that child when they grows up? Who's that child allowed to marry? Because the child's blemished. Child's a blemished child now, came from a union that never should have been. But God didn't stop it. God allowed the child to be born. So what happened? Who's the child going to end up marrying? Either someone of that same union, in other words, someone with a similar union, or convert. They're only allowed to marry someone of the same union or a convert. Now, someone is a JIT or, a convert, a JIT, a Jew in training, right? My language here. Anyone who's going to use that, I'll sue you because I'm going to patent it. In any case, anyone's a JIT or a convert is going to say, what? We're second-class citizens? So you're going to say we're also blemished? That a mamzer, this blemished child, is going to marry a convert or someone in the same union? Or it could be a Jew also. Let's say a Jew comes from a similar union. Don't we say a Jew has a higher pedigree? You know why a Jew has a higher pedigree than a non-Jew? I'm going to get in trouble here. It's a good thing we're recording here, right? Why does a Jew have a higher pedigree than a non-Jew? Because we got the Torah Mount Sinai. We got the Torah Mount Sinai. Non-Jews didn't want it. They weren't interested. So what happens? So Torah elevates a person, elevates a Jew. Right? Now, Torah can elevate a non-Jew also. There's only one problem. The Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, anyone who wanted to join could have joined with Abraham. And the cutoff point was really by the Tower of Babel. Says the Ramchal. But God had mercy. Anyone who wanted to join, and be part of the Jewish people, they could have joined up until Mount Sinai. After Mount Sinai, everything's closed. If they want to join the Jewish people, they have to convert. They have to go through conversion. So someone will say, and I had someone tell me, had I been in my great grandparents' generation, I wouldn't have rejected the Torah. So I said, so? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you would have done. What matters is what was done. So what was done was they rejected the Torah. So the fact that you weren't there doesn't matter. The fact that they rejected the Torah, guess what? Now I have to go through conversion. But again, Up until a certain point, a non-Jew could have joined. They could have joined. They chose not to. Okay. It's their choice. So what distinguishes Jews from non-Jews? Because doesn't the Torah say we're the chosen people, right? We are the chosen people because we chose God and God chose us, right? For better, for worse, right? God chose us. We chose him. So now God's stuck with us, so to speak. So what distinguishes a Jew from a non-Jew? It's only one thing. You say, wow, isn't the way they dress? Isn't how they act? Yeah, it's by Torah. And if a Jew does not hold by Torah mitzvahs, he's worse than a non-Jew. And we see it over and over and over again. We see that Jews, that if they do not have a moral compass, i.e. the Torah, what's going to keep them doing things in a moral way? You're going to say they have a conscience. Really? They have a conscience. The Greeks claim to be, most philosophical. Look what they brought to the world, so to speak. Language and arts and all kinds of things. By the Greeks, it was by the Greeks or the Romans. When the parents got older, they didn't want to deal with them. They take them on a hike, take them to a mountain, say, Mom, Dad's been real, see ya. They left them there, fed themselves. Boy, what knowledge. And you got the same people today that will say, a non-Jew, after 120 years, God's going to say, did you keep my Noahide laws? And the person's going to say, I didn't know about them, never heard about them. Is it really? But the universal. So the person said, well, what do you mean? God says, well, you're not allowed to steal. So I see here, based on your records, you didn't give to Uncle Sam too much. You hid money from the government. That's stealing. No, not to steal. No, that's different. Uncle Sam takes 35%. He takes too much. That's okay. No, we hold that stealing. Okay, let me see. Looks like over here you killed your uncle. What do you mean I killed I didn't kill him. That's euthanasia. That's euthanasia. That's different. That's mercy. Really? What's the difference? I wasn't functioning. Burden to his family. We put him out of our misery in his own also, and he was suffering. So what? What? I think it's like a dog. Someone asked me this question earlier. Are you allowed to kill a dog if the dog is suffering? The answer is yes. You're allowed to put it down. Now, some people will say, "Come on." I had this discussion, I don't know, a few weeks back, one of my conversion classes about dogs, about pets. People love pets. I was in Chile for 6 months. Every house on the street I lived in had dogs. I think just about everyone. They barely had children, right? They all had dogs. All had dogs. So people say, come on, dogs, cats, other animals. You see how people treat them. And I'll offend people this way also, I'm sure. And okay, they're not human. I don't care what anyone says. They're not human. They're not. They're animals. So, again, people can get very attached to them. And I know someone that doesn't watch this video, so I can mention this. And, it's definitely permissible anyway, because it's just something, irrational and stupid. I shouldn't say irrational. It's not necessarily irrational, right? Stupid, I think it is. Their dog, I'm not going to get graphic here, got, they're trusted, whatever, they're a small dog. And the dog got mangled, got ripped to shreds by a coyote. It should never happen. Dogs should live out their lives. They should be happy, whatever. They shouldn't be ripped to shreds by other animals. Okay. This person made it was like a memorial. People like, sending condolences. Going to say Kaddish for this dog. I remember one of the few things actually I enjoyed when I was in Santiago. I went to a zoo, and at the beginning of the zoo was a pet cemetery, right? So I mentioned to someone, say, great, we're going to bring 10 people here. We're going to say the mourner's prayer every year, right? The day the dog died. I can imagine how much it costs to bury, a dog, a cat, horse, whatever, this pet cemetery, right? But this person's all broken up by it. I understand, right? I also had a dog growing up, so I understand there's emotional attachment, definitely emotional attachment, but it's a dog. It's an animal. What happens when a dog dies? Dog only has one aspect of the soul. You know what aspect of the soul is? Right? That aspect of the soul is the animalistic soul. That's it. Doesn't have anything else. Even if it's reincarnated, the soul's going to go up. The dog's going to die. Dog's going to go in the ground. Anything going to happen to the dog? Dog has a portion of the world to come? No. Dog dies. I heard a story. It's kind of silly, but there was a story. Someone who died. Before he died, this person, thank God he wasn't Jewish, but he had a dog, and when his dog died, he had the dog cremated, and he had his ashes spread around its favorite tree. Right? Not going to get gruesome, man. Around, whatever, the ashes were spread around his favorite tree. So this person, when he died, right, he put in his will, whatever, and he said he wanted the same thing done to him. Now you can tell me the whole question, are non-Jews, are they allowed to get cremated? Seemingly they are. I don't think it's, I don't think it's an issue. But without getting into that, this person got cremated and had his ashes spread around the same tree. And what did he say? I mean, it's absurd, right? You can't make this stuff up. What did the person say? The person says, it's good enough for my dog. It's good enough for me. Like, are you serious? You're comparing yourself to a dog. We all know why the tree was a dog's favorite, right? We're not going to go past that, right? We're not going to go into detail here. But you want to tell me you're the same as a dog? You're comparing yourself to a dog? Okay. In this other case, I can understand. I can understand the dog's, a part of the family. You missed the dog, a terrible way for a dog to go. Okay. I'm also a dog lover at heart. No one wants to say, see their precious, pet get ripped to shreds, etc. I get it. It's a dog. You're not saying Kaddish for a dog. You're not saying the morning prayer for a dog. You're not having a shrine for a dog. That's just idiocy. You bury the dog, okay. I mean, if they found the dog, whatever, you bury the dog, okay. You feel bad. You move on. We get it, people get attached, and again, animal lovers will rip me to shreds over here. You don't understand, man's best friend or whatever type of animals. It's not really so bad. They're companions. They're this. Some people need them. Psychological reasons, that's a different issue, right? That I would say is a different issue. But remember, it's an animal. An animal is not a human. I don't care. They have certain senses. They have this. An animal, according to us and according to nature, they're programmed. They're programmed DNA. I remember in 9th grade, one thing I remember from one of my classes in social studies was, go home to your pets, and just say anything you want to your pet and see how they react. See how they yell at it, scream at it, whatever. See how they react. I don't know. This is an interesting experiment. Let's see. I had a poodle, at the time. If I came back, it sounded like saying, oh, you stupid, this, that, the other thing. No reaction. Everything's the same. Wanted to, scratch her tummy, let her out, this, that. No difference. They're programmed. That's the point, right? Famous experiment with a cat that can teach a cat to do a lot of things, right? Unbelievable experiments. But a cat, its nature is still a cat. So what does someone do? Take out his pocket, take out a mouse, put the mouse on the floor. What does the cat do? Drops everything, runs after the mouse. What happened? What happened over here? Look how sophisticated the cat was. Cat could do this, cat could do that. Do all kinds of things. But you know what? It's a cat. And the nature of the cat is to chase and eat a mouse. That's its nature. You're not going to change its nature. That's what it is. A dog, no different. These other animals, you can train them for certain things. Fine. Train them to attack people, other things, but they're programmed. They're programmed. But, so why am I mentioning all this? I mention all this because somebody went, they went way overboard. And I still see sometimes they're going to post and say, oh, we miss you so much. Okay. I can understand. But the beginning, hundreds of people, I feel your pain. We send our condolences. It's like, God forbid, they had a child that died. That's how they look at it. An animal's not a child. I beg to differ. It's not a child. Not according to any source. Right? But they took it way too far. Right? Way too far over here. So, I don't even know how I got into that. But, the idea is, we're allowed to use animals as well. We're allowed to use them for scientific experimentation, as long as we don't abuse them. Right? We're allowed to use them to find cures. Jews are not allowed to hunt. Right? It's considered cruel. Not to mention probably going to the ways of non-Jews, but it's considered cruel. Jews don't do things that are cruel. It's funny in Europe and other places where they want to ban ritual slaughter. You want to know how an animal is ritually slaughtered? Let's say a bird, or a cow, right? They take this long knife, right? Extremely sharp, razor sharp. One of the ways actually they see, they have to make sure, that the knife doesn't have any nicks. It doesn't have any nicks in it. You have to check it, every so often while they're doing this. And one of the ways to check how sharp it is, is one of the ways the Gemara says, check it with your tongue. So I once saw ritual slaughter, which I thought was going to make me a vegetarian. Thank God it didn't. So I asked, the ritual slaughter was there. So by the way, you ever check the knife on your tongue? He just looked at me. He was like, not just asking. I said, stick out your tongue. I just want to see if there are any serrations. Like, get out of here. What are you doing? I was having fun. But anyway, I digress. So they take this sharp knife and they get the animal down, and they hit the knife in the air. They hit the neck in the area where the windpipe and the trachea meet. So what does that mean? It means they cut it in one shot, basically. Hope no one's eating here. They're going to cut the head off, basically. But the animal's going to die instantaneously. Instantaneously. In other words, the animal doesn't even feel it. Boom, one thing, it's done. And it dies. So why is that inhumane? Some people could say, well, maybe the way they pen them up and they hold them, maybe that's inhumane. The slaughter itself is definitely not. That is definitely not. So I remember thinking in the back of my mind, while all this was going on, I said, I wonder how the non-Jews here do it. So we were basically done. So I said, okay, I'm going to hang around a little bit. I just want to see. I want to see what they do. And if they claim what we do is what do you call it? Is cruel. I saw what they were doing. I'm not going to go into detail. I mean, they were hacking this animal to death before it died. You talk about pain. You talk about suffering. I mean, it's a joke compared to what we do. Animal dies instantaneously. So if the animal dies instantaneously, why in the world are they going to say we shouldn't do it because it's cruel? Because anti-Semitism. So I'll tell one other story while I'm on that, speak about cruelty to animals. Many years ago in Switzerland, right, of all humane places, they wanted to forbid, or they forbade ritual slaughter. So what do? What do they say? So they say, okay, if you want to ritually slaughter, we'll allow you to do it in one way. What's the only way we'll allow you to do it? The only way we will allow you to do it is if you stun it first. In other words, you're going to give an electric shock. You're going to give an electric shock. And then you can slaughter it. So, Yechiel Weinberg, of blessed memory, known for his book, The 3-Day Aish. It's a commentary on the Talmud, and he also had questions and answers, throughout all the Torah. And he's got a very long response on this thing. The Gemara says someone who's if you have an animal that's in danger of dying, right? So the whole question of slaughtering it. if did it die before we really slaughtered it or whatever. Now, what's the problem over here? What's the problem over here by zapping it? By giving it some electricity. Now, you tell me, well, if you give it too much electricity, you kill it. True? So obviously they knew how much to give, that the animal's not going to die. But what's the problem? They found, when they checked the inside of an animal, they found some of the inner organs were burnt from the electricity. Now, it doesn't mean they gave him a lot of electricity, just to kill it. They stunned it. Right? Again, I can't imagine something getting stunned and your brain's getting fried, but okay, that's humane. Right? So it says it's 3-day age. He goes for all these different proofs, and he says, and he wouldn't allow it. He wouldn't allow it. Why? Because if one of the inner organs, there are 18 signs of an animal, the Gemara says, that makes it into what we call a treifa. What does it mean it's a treifa? It means if it's got like a hole in the lung, or let's say a hole in the heart, let's say better, or let's say it's got a hole in the brain, something like that, it's not going to live for a year. Right? So when we use the word treif in general, what do we mean? We mean it's not kosher, but it has a specific meaning. Right? It means that the animal from this thing is going to die within a year. Maybe it's missing a limb, maybe it's missing an inner organ, whatever the case is. So let's say this animal gets zapped, doesn't die, gets stunned. How do you know? You have to check this with every animal, right? But the 3-day saw when they checked the animals after the animal was stunned, they found some of the organs were burnt. So even before they ritually slaughter it, made into a treifa. If it made it treif, can't eat it, right? Non-Jew could eat it, and Jew can't eat it, right? But so anyway, he's got this whole long response about this whole thing. So he came out and said no. Said, you can't do it. So they had to import meat. All right, they weren't allowed to ritually slaughter. They weren't going to do that. That's cruel. Right? It's also cruel to animals. Right? But if you think about it, you think about it in general, it's if you take this long, extremely sharp knife, the animal doesn't feel it. The animal dies instantaneously. How is that inhumane compared to giving it some electricity and frying its brain? How is that not inhumane? Right? You know what these non-Jews say? We don't care. That's the way you're going to do it. You don't want to do it that way? That's it. But see, it's not about inhumanity. It's not about being inhumane. Because if you look at a ritual slaughter, they die instantaneously. Birds, no different, same thing. Right? You do the same thing with the bird. Right? You hold the neck, you basically cut the windpipe and the trachea at the same time. The bird dies straight away. It's not like, it suffocates, it dies. It's not like split second, it's got no air and it's going to flap around for, no, it dies straight away. It dies straight away. There's sometimes, I'm not going to get gross here, but I remember seeing a bird without a head still flapping. Didn't have a head, right? So, okay, it died shortly thereafter. That's not the norm. It normally dies straight away. All right, that's not inhumane. Why do they say it's inhumane? Very simple. It's inhumane because they're anti-Semites. That's why it's inhumane. So in general, animals we're allowed to use for whatever we want, as long as we don't abuse them. I want to take an alligator, use its skin to make alligator boots, no problem. I want to kill a bunch of minks and take the skin and make it into a fedora, like a Hasidic hat with all these, with this fur. I'm allowed to do it. I'm definitely allowed to do it. The PETA activists, whatever you want to call them, can jump up and down and say, that's cruelty to animals. So what? Right? We don't hold it. First of all, we don't hold it cruel. I can do what I want. As long as I don't abuse it. That's not abuse. It's not abuse by us. Right? Using animals to run after other animals to trap them, that's abuse. That's cruel. That's scaring the animal. That's cruel. Right? There is a case where, you take veal. Right? Veal technically is kosher. You can eat it. Right? What's the problem though? Problem is they keep this animal, in a small confined area. So it is really cruel how they keep it in order to make the meat more tender. But technically, even if they ritually slaughter it, you should be allowed to eat it. It's not a kashrus issue, right? It's more of a philosophical issue, the way they keep it. So many will say that's cruel, you shouldn't eat it. Now, does that mean if it's ritually slaughtered, I can't eat it? No. Perfectly good. Right? Anyone's had veal? It's tasty. Right? It's extremely tasty over here. Right? There's no question. Anyone who's eating it. It's very tasty. What's the problem? It's cruel. The way they keep it. Right? But technically I could eat it. But being cruel to animals, there are certain halachas. Right? There are certain laws over here. An animal, you have to feed it first before you eat. Right? Because if you eat and the animal hasn't eaten, that's cruel. Right? You tell the animal, dog, cat, whatever, don't worry about it. I'm eating first. I come first. My life comes first. Now, you know what to do. Animal has to eat first. Right? You tell me, the animal's hungry while you're eating. Well, it's their problem. They ate already. Right? They got all their nutrients. They ate already. That's not cruel. I'm allowed to eat now. Well, there are certain laws. Can't just do what I want when I want. Right? But hunting, there's already a response in the 1800s, mid to late 1800s, that's brought down that the Noda Yehuda was a Rav in Prague more than 100 years ago, 50 years ago. And he basically said, hunting for sport, not if you're starving. Hunting for sport for Jews is forbidden. It's cruel. Right now, someone asked me this last week in a Q&A, what about non-Jews? Right? What about non-Jews? Non-Jews should be the same thing. Right? Now, the question is, the Gemara goes through a whole question that if a person is cruel to an animal, is that a Torah rabbinic prohibition? Right? Difference of opinion. Some say it's a Torah prohibition, some rabbinic prohibition. Yeah, in any case, it's pretty severe. Pretty severe. Now, a non-Jew, let's keep in mind, a non-Jew has to keep things that are universal, that make sense according to the Torah. So the question is this called cruelty even for non-Jews? I don't know if that's called cruelty. I don't think most people would say it's cruel. How non-Jews kill, how they're going to kill animals or what they're going to do. They'll kill it however way they want. It's gonna be cruel, right? So by them, a lot of people hunt for sport. Plenty of people hunt for sport. They don't, they're not hunting to eat the animal. It's the thrill of the chase. Maybe they're gonna take some people have, the head of a moose or whatever, stick it on their mantle. They have it stuffed. Okay. It's the thrill of the chase. Some will eat the animal. I'm not saying not. Right? If a person's starving for a Jew, you'd be allowed to. 100% you'd be allowed to. Right? That's not called cruel anymore. You're doing it for survival. Now, obviously, you got to make sure you don't, make this animal into a treifa. You got to trap it in a way where you're not going to, render it that you can't eat it. You have to ritually slaughter it, etc. Right? But in such a case, also, it's going in the ways of non-Jews. Jews are not allowed to go in the ways of non-Jews. Also, pretty severe prohibition. Right? Even though some people will say, well, it's not such a big deal. What's the big deal if I do what non-Jews do? How bad can it be? So, because a lot of things non-Jews do aren't good. They're just not good. They can be cruel. They, all kinds of things. That's why we keep our distance. We should keep our distance if possible. We don't want to learn from their bad ways. Problem is, we're surrounded. We're surrounded, and then person send their kids, to, let's say to public school. They go They go to high school, they go to university. What are they going to learn? They're going to learn heresy. They're going to learn things that are against Judaism. That's for sure. And they're going to be just like non-Jews. Because we said before, I don't think I actually finished this idea. We said before, what distinguishes a Jew from a non-Jew? What elevates a Jew more than a non-Jew? Torah does. Now, can a non-Jew be elevated? They can. Right? They're also going to have a portion of the world to come. It's just not going to look the same as the Jews. You know why? Because we have a lot more mitzvahs. Jews have a lot more obligation. Because we have a lot more obligation, we're already starting at a higher level. Now, the Ramchal says, clear as day, brings down in the way of God in the book Derech Hashem. He says, clear as day, non-Jews on a lower level, on a much lower level. Why? Because they don't have that aspect of the soul that we got at Mount Sinai. And that transforms the Jew into who they are. You're going to tell me, what about the 13.5 million secular Jews in the world? Are they any different than non-Jews? No. They're not that much different. Not the way they dress, not the way they act, not the way they eat. Right? What distinguishes a Jew from a non-Jew? What distinguishes a Jew from a non-Jew is the mitzvahs that we keep, the Torah that we keep. Because, at the end of the book of Leviticus was to tell me, we'll get there one day, probably the next millennium. What does the end of the book of Leviticus tell me? Tells me that God took out the Jewish people to make them holy. To distinguish us between non-Jews, i.e. what we eat. What holidays we keep. I'm always fond of saying, you think God took us out of Egypt so Jews could eat shrimp? So Jews could spit in his face? No, he wanted to make us holy. To make us into a holy nation. What about non-Jews? So they can also have a portion. They can also be holy if they keep what they need to keep. Now, obviously, their place in the next world is going to be different than ours because they don't have the same obligation. So what's someone going to say? What's the obvious question? You're going to say, Rabbi, you just said the most racist thing you could have said. Not true. I said other things, other worse things, right? You're going to say, oh, you think you're better? Well, what does the Torah tell me? Does the Torah tell me the nations are chosen by God? No. The Torah tells me the Jewish people are chosen by God. Guess what? If you look at the Talmud, right, in Avodah Zarah 2b to 3a, the Talmud, the Medrash say the same thing. God went to all the nations. God went to all the nations. What did he do? He gave them an opportunity to keep the Torah. Gave them an opportunity. What happened? He gave them an opportunity. They didn't want it. They rejected it. They totally rejected it. Now, if they want that, extra aspect of the soul, great. Let them convert. If they don't want it, okay, that's their choice. So they're already at a deficit. True? But they had an opportunity. They still have an opportunity. Right? But way back when, they didn't want the Torah. God went to Esau, right? To Edom, to Esau. They rejected the Torah, went to Yishmael. They rejected the Torah to the Muslims, to the Arabs. They rejected the Torah. God goes to all the nations. Come to Jewish people. You want the Torah? They say, sure. You want to know what's written in it? They say, doesn't matter. They said, Naaseh v'nishma. We will do, then we will hear. But if a Jew doesn't act the way the Torah says, you're no different than a non-Jew. And there are many things a Jew can do that can lose their status as a Jew. That's a great job. It's in public, for one. Intermarry, second one. Unless they repent. They need to repent. If not, there are certain things that have the status of a non-Jew. So people say, oh, but you're chosen. You're right. We are chosen, for better or for worse. So we have obligations, higher obligations. A non-Jew wants to take on those obligations. Great. If they don't, they can still have a portion of the world to come. 100% they can still have a portion of the world to come. It's not going to look the same. They don't have as much to do. But make no mistake, a Jew who acts like a non-Jew is worse. It's worse. Because we always say either a Jew's going to go very high, they're going to go all the way up to heaven, or they're going to go straight into the ground. They're going to go straight into the dirt. There's nothing in between. Either we're doing the right thing at a high level, or, God forbid, the opposite. Yeah, someone had a question here. Someone said, that's the same with foie gras, where they force feed ducks or geese to inflate their organs. There is a question about that. Unfortunately, chickens are no different. We can say the same thing about chicken. Chicken is the same. Chicken essentially is the same. A lot of times they also force feed. Right? They also force feed. So if that's the case, we shouldn't be allowed to eat chicken either. Shouldn't be allowed to eat chicken either, but we eat chicken, right? We also, we eat chicken. So something like that, we eat duck also, right? But nowadays unfortunately, that's how they're fed. That's how they're raised. Now, the only problem with all that is, even let's say you didn't say it was wasn't a problem of abusing animals. Let's say that wasn't an issue. Well, what would be the issue? The issue is, how do you know? You have to see this duck, chicken, or whatever walk. Because even if it walks a little bit, what could it do? The fact that it's blown up only after a short while, and then you're about to slaughter it, right? It could be one of the sinews, one of the tendons is ripped. That could render it not kosher, right? Chicken, same thing. And there were some great rabbinic authorities that were very stringent, that they would, they had their personal ritual slaughter, and they would only allow them, they would only watch it walk in front of them before they had it slaughtered. Right? Because if it couldn't walk, or let's say better, it would waddle, right? Because it's so blown up over a short amount of time. A lot of times this, whatever, duck, chicken, whatever it is going to have problems, right? Sinews could have been ripped. Right? So the question is, we eat duck. We definitely eat duck. I don't know so many people that don't eat it. So again, I'm pretty sure that's how, chickens also, and chickens also, they blow them up very quickly. They feed them a lot also. I don't think it's any different. We don't not eat chicken, right? Now, a person can say, "Wow, that's terrible. That's cruel." Could be, could be, but that, in a lot of places that's what's done. So, if that's the case, it doesn't render it unfit to eat, unless there are other issues, just like we mentioned before. If there are other issues, and it walks a little bit and it rips a tendon or whatever the case is. So maybe, a lot of these things we wouldn't be able to eat, right? Or let's say better. Let's say by, what's it called? By veal. It's put in a box in a small area in order to make the meats more tender. And if you ritually slaughter it when it's very tender, you're allowed to eat it. You're allowed to eat it. It doesn't nullify the fact that you can't eat it. Right? So again, even if you tell me it's cruel, how they're doing it doesn't mean I can't eat it. It's a philosophical issue. Some people may say you shouldn't eat it because of that. Okay. I definitely hear that. Doesn't mean it's forbidden. 100% doesn't mean it's forbidden over here. It's a philosophical issue. But I don't know anyone, who doesn't eat duck for that reason. There are plenty of people that eat duck. I mean, I think duck is, especially here, here in Israel, I think it's cost prohibitive, right? Like most meat, is through the roof. But if a person, I don't think people are worried about it. You say, well, whatever became well known, I don't think it stopped people from eating it. Definitely not. Unless there was a whole uproar and they have to do it in a different way and different things, and there'd be a whole uproar. But I don't necessarily see that. But again, if it would be an issue of how they walk, and the fact that they could rip tendons and sinews or whatever to render it not kosher, that would be an issue. That for sure is an issue, right? So obviously they probably don't make them walk around too much. They probably just blow them up and they just kill them straight away, right? Otherwise, could ruin, a whole batch, tens, thousands, because that could definitely be the issue. That would be the issue. Yeah, let me see. There are other questions here. 1 second. Someone asks, back to Azazel here. See, we're getting very far here. Is Azazel the name of a demon? No. I don't know exactly where that comes from. If it's considered like, a fallen angel. We mentioned 2 weeks ago, Azazel, is an acronym, right? It comes from, the word "az," which means strong and harsh, right? And it means like a harsh mountain or a cut land, right? Means harsh, cut, so to speak, right? Is it a demon? Not that I know of. I mean, again, I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. It's not from here, right? Definitely not from here. Azazel here, it's clear as a goat, and that it could be why would someone translate it like that? Potentially, someone might translate it because we mentioned it's going to go out to the land. It's going to go out to a barren desert or whatever. It's going to go off a cliff. Well, who's in charge of who's in charge of barren lands? Demons, essentially, right? We're going to see. I don't think we're going to get there today, right? But I think we mentioned it before. I think we mentioned last 2 weeks ago. We spoke about it in the last number of classes, right? That there's certain angels or whatever that watch over areas, deserts, the sea, other places, right? So, one of the things we talked about is giving Mr. S, a bribe. Same thing with his demon, whatever. What are you giving it? You're giving it to this animal. And then they're going to deal with it. They're going to throw it off the cliff or whatever the case is. So it could be it comes from that, but in and of itself, it's not a demon, right? We don't hold it's a demon. We hold clear it's a goat, right? I'll do a little more research, see where that idea came from, but it's nowhere here. Definitely not what I've seen. No question. Like I said, if you Google it, that's what comes up. It's some sort, I don't know. I looked it up, I don't know, a few weeks ago. It comes up as some sort of demon, something or whatever. I don't know what that source is. And not from here. Definitely not from here. Because again, even if it would be, even if I would agree, which I don't, but even if I would agree, what's the problem? We said you're not sacrificing it to a demon. Let's say it is a demon. Let's say it's an angel. I mean, demon is half angel also, right? Without getting into all that. Well, let's say an angel, a demon. The Rebbeinu B'chai quotes the Ramban, right? And he says explicitly, you're not sacrificing to that. That's idolatry. So it can't be a demon. It can't be an angel, right? There's no possible way because that's idolatry, right? 100%, that would be idolatry, right? What's the source? What they say? I don't know. I have to see. I have to see what they, I have to go to Rabbi Dr. Google, see what, see what he brings down. From here, we don't, certainly not. Certainly not. Someone asks, no, I obligated to listen to stages. Let's say about listening to vaccine, listening to, a great rabbi, this and that. So I would say like this, it's always good to answer a question with another question. And that is, what would be my what would be my question here? Question would be, how would a Noahide in general know what to do? Oh, well, let's say better. How would a Noahide know what to do in general today? They'll say they'll go to Google. Yeah, Google doesn't answer everything. Rabbi Dr. Google doesn't answer everything. So how's the Noahide going to know what to do? He has to go to a rabbinic authority, knows what they're doing. Right? 100%. Who's the Noahide going to listen to? Who are they going to listen to? Right? The question here is, they have to listen to the sages about, let's say, the COVID vaccine. There's a whole difference of opinion, among authorities about the vaccine itself. We're not going to go there. But what about any other decision? What about any decision in life? They have a question about. Right? The Torah says clear. Book of Deuteronomy, you got to listen to the Kohen in every generation. Even if he says what's black is white and what's white is black. You got to listen. You got to say, okay, that's fine. That's by a Jew. Good. Even if that's by a Jew. How is a Noahide, a non-Jew, or a JIT, doesn't matter, or a Jew in training, how in the world are they going to know what to do if they don't listen to the rabbis? You go to any of these Noahide websites that are worth something. Who's in charge of the websites normally? Not non-Jews. I mean, there might be non-Jews, but they have a rabbinic board. They have to have a rabbinic board. How are they going to know what to do? Because at the end of the day, doesn't it say non-Jews going to come to a Jew pool and the sister says, I want to learn Torah? Where else are they going to learn from? So yeah, they have questions. They have questions. Who they're going to ask? They'll ask the sages. That's what they're going to ask. They have no one. Who else they're going to ask? Right? Well, right now we're training non-Jews, to know the Noahide laws. Right? Also, a couple years ago, it was already a couple years ago, gave a class in Derech Hashem, in the way of God. And also teach them philosophical things. What's the purpose of creation? Well, how's the evil inclination work? What about reincarnation? Spiritual forces. I think non-Jews have to know that also. Right? They have to be under guidance of rabbis. I don't think there's any question. But if they're in their own communities, and that's the whole goal, set them up in their own communities, they have to be taught. Non-Jew going to learn the Noahide laws by themselves? I don't think so. Let me think about that. No, I don't think so. Not going to happen. They have to go to a Jew for advice. How else are they going to know? I've had people tell me, yeah, I got my own knowledge. I don't need you. I don't need your class. I don't know, whatever. I can do everything on my own. Good luck. Guarantee you'll transgress left, right, and center. As the non-Jew. Nothing to talk about. The Jew in training, also nothing to talk about. Person needs guidance. 100% a person needs guidance. Right? No question. No question about it. So who's going to teach that? That's the whole point. We're doing this class for Noahide. So they, can teach others and they can have the information. But where's that guidance going to come from? Not through themselves. One of the first things I put on my blog years ago was, in the process of conversion, don't think you're going to get through this process yourself. Just not going to happen. It has nothing to do with lack of knowledge. Sorry, with, lack of IQ. Person can have 120 IQ, could be a genius. You're not going to get through the process themselves. It's just not going to happen. It's too much detail. It's a lot of information. It's not going to happen. Does that mean, non-Jews are stupid? No. It doesn't mean that. It means, they don't know how to navigate. They won't know how to navigate. They should know how to navigate. How will they know how to navigate? Who are they going to get the information from? They're going to get it from us. Right? That's where it's going to come from. Where it's going to have to come from. Not going to come anywhere else. Right? So the question would be, someone had a question about the COVID vaccine. Now, most people would tell you to go ask a doctor. Or what's the rabbi going to tell you? So, if a rabbi looked into it and he's convinced one way or the other, Okay, they also have a sixth sense. They're also unbiased in different things. So you can say, how do they evaluate evidence? That's their issue. But you can take somebody that has a lot of Torah knowledge and you learn that also. It's not out of the realm of reality, right? But I mean, it's a very volatile thing. Some people say you should never get it, never do it. It's going to do this, do that. True, other people swear by it and say you have to get it, and you're over Torah prohibition, that you're not guarding your life, whatever, a whole bunch of things, right? But anything in life, someone needs guidance. That's where you go. It's the only place to go. Where else are you going to go? You're going to go to secular people that have no knowledge of Torah, going to lead you in the wrong direction. There's no other place to go. Right? You want the real information, you come to us. Right? Now, there are things that, could be a great rabbi to say, you have to ask your doctor. See what the doctor said, get back to me. Let's say doctor says you need major surgery. Right? You get a second opinion, et cetera, and then you go to the Rav and say, okay, this is what happened. This is what they told me. Now, this person's also an expert in these type of things. He'll tell you, yay, nay, this, that. You got to say, what? You're going to listen to him? What are you going to listen to him for? Because they have other knowledge we don't. Right? Famous story with the Chazon Ish. Famous Chazon Ish of Avram Yishai Karo, to blessed memory. There was a student of his, someone very close to. This person had basically an inoperable tumor in his brain. Doctor didn't know what to do. Expert surgeon didn't know what to do. He said, if I go in and I miss a little bit, there'll be a vegetable. If I go in this way, it'll be a vegetable. Right? Nothing he could do made sense. So he went to the Chazon Ish, told him the story. So Chazon Ish took out a piece of paper, drew a picture of the brain, and he told this person, he said, okay, tell the doctor, go in here, go out here, and this is what he should do. So you can say, what is he? Which doctor was he? Crazy? God forbid. He's given other knowledge over here. So what did he do? So this person took this sketch from the Chazon Ish, brought to the doctor. Again, a world expert surgeon. Brings it to the doctor. Doctor says, wow, this person's a genius. That's the only way to do it. I can do it. I'll be able to save your life. This is unbelievable. He said, I have to meet this person. So he met the Chazon Ish. He met him in person. He didn't make one move without speaking to him. That's how impressed he was. Now, let me ask you, you think the Chazon Ish, studied up on science, read every science book there was? No. Right, I say the same thing about my Rebbe. He's got a whole book on different take different medicine for different things, different situation person has, whatever it is. So I told him once, I said, listen, he happens to be an expert in a lot of things. One of them in end of life issues. So I once asked him, it doesn't mean he hasn't spoken to doctors, he's spoken to a lot of doctors also, but he's got an uncanny brain for all this. So I told him, I said, either you have an unbelievable library, secular library in the bathroom I've never found, or you have some high level degree you're not telling anyone about. You got other knowledge you're not telling us about. He just looked at me and grunted. That was it. He's like, yeah, whatever. Where's the person to get this type of knowledge? And you go to university, you go to med school, you're going to say it's a witch doctor. I don't think it's a witch doctor. Knows the body inside out. Right? Where do you get the knowledge from? Torah. Right? It's the sixth sense. It's what, person has that type of knowledge, God gave it to him. You tell someone, never open up a science book, right? Barely. He draws a picture of the brain and says where to operate. Most people are going to say, I ain't taking that chance. You gotta be crazy. Why would ever I go to him like that for a question like that? Kashrus question, yeah. Blessing question, yeah. Other questions, yeah. What? I'm going to go to him about a question of business? What do they know about business? I'm going to go to him a question about, medicine. You'd be surprised. You'd be very surprised. What the knowledge great rabbis have. I'll tell one story. My rabbi once told me. And he said he was in South Africa for many years. And he said he had a disagreement between him and the doctors. Must have been 35, 40 years ago. something like that. So he told me like 25 years later, 30 years later, not much longer, it's about 40 years later, more. He said the doctors in South Africa agreed that I was right. They agreed he was right. So he said, for that, you call me Dr. Sternbuch. So I said, Rabbi Dr. Sternbuch? He goes, no, there's the rabbi, there's the doctor. Never the two shall meet. I was like, Rabbi Doctor? He goes, okay, I got it. He goes, I got it. Right? So where do you get that kind of knowledge? He's telling me something, these doctors have been studying this stuff for years. For years, 20 years, 30 years, more. This rabbi comes along and tells them they're wrong. And he proves them wrong based on what the Torah says, what the Gemara says, what the commentaries say. So where do you get that kind of knowledge? God helped them. But they have a different type of knowledge. A different type of knowledge. He's got other knowledge. Why? Again, I never found a secular book in his house. Not in the bathroom, not anywhere. Nowhere. Right? So where do you get the knowledge from? Where did the Chazon Ish get the knowledge from? Right? How is it possible? God gave him other knowledge. He gave him other knowledge. Little birdie told him. That's where he got knowledge from. It's all from learning. You think someone gets knowledge of the human brain and knows how to operate greater than one of the top surgeons in the world? And all he did was sit and learn Torah day and night? And he learned so much, the Chazon Ish, that, he wasn't strong in nature, by nature. And there were times, he fell asleep on the floor. He didn't make it to his bed. He miscalculated how much strength he had left. So how do you have that kind of knowledge? He got it all from Torah. If people say, oh, what does he know? He's only got his head in the books. Yeah. Can you draw a picture of the brain? Tell me where to draw it? No. He's got a different type of knowledge. It's a different type of knowledge. I saw my Rebbe hands-on. Certain things, ask certain questions. I was like, how'd you know how to ask such a thing? I said, if I would have asked, I would have got slapped. He goes, yeah, that's the difference between you and me. He said, you would have got slapped. I got my question answered, and this and that. It's a different level. It's a totally different level. Totally different level. Right? So a non-Jew in general, where are they going to get guidance from? The rabbis. That's where they're going to get guidance from. Who else are they going to get guidance from? A preacher? Right? A priest? The Dalai Lama? Where are they going to get guidance from? They're going to get it from us. Someone asks by the name Azazael, right? Does that mean to God? No. Right? The word kel at the end does not mean God. It means strong. Right? The word kel in general, right? There are different names for God. Right? So the name kel is for strength, power. But it doesn't mean God. Doesn't mean God over here. Right? We said before that both are for the sake of God. Right? One's Lashem, one's Azazel. But again, it's not a sacrifice. It's going to God, but yeah, it doesn't mean that. Someone asked, Noahide, who live in the States, recognize common law marriage. Yeah, there are only certain states, right? There was a whole case. I think I mentioned this once before with the actor William Hurt was living with someone, had a bunch of kids, had a few kids, I think, and I think it was in South Carolina. She called common law marriage. He said no, because she wanted, he walked out, and she wanted half his money. He said no. So I think the way it came out is I think he had to pay something, but he didn't have to pay half. So, person points out there are a number of states that have common law marriage. So, what is marriage for Noahide in general? Right? Marriage for Noahide is living together. That's marriage. Common law marriage. Live together. What's divorce? The Rambam says, person walks away. right? That's divorce. But again, a person does not have to go jump through hoops over here. They don't have to certify it according to the state. If they don't want to, they don't have to. It might be beneficial, maybe for tax purposes, for other things. But in general, do you have an obligation to have a civil marriage? No. Does the person have an obligation to live in a place that has common law marriage? No. Right? It doesn't matter what the state says. We care what the Torah says. Torah says you live together. It's good enough. In certain states, it's on the books in America, common law marriage. Okay. That mean you have to live there to be a Noahide? No. You live anywhere. Doesn't matter. Right? I mean, living together, i.e. common law marriage, that's how Noahides get married. They have to go in front of justice of the peace? No. They have to make it legal? No. Right? Marriage by them is living together. Right? Divorce is walking away. That's what it is. Yeah. Let me see other questions. How do you wash tzitzis without the strings getting demolished or unraveled? One way is that there's a certain thing on the market. I have to find it, but it's a thing that you tie. It's a plastic thing that you tie the strings up to, and then in the wash, you do it on a delicate cycle. It shouldn't come out, right? But even without that, I've done it. I've tried with the with aluminum foil. I think actually I had a problem with that also. I think that also came out. Some people say I think you wrap it inside socks. If you wrap the strings inside, like if you would roll it into a ball, right, so to speak, inside socks, I think that helps also. Could be wrong, but I think that helps. I think that that's helps also. Or you can wash them by hand. If none of these things work and whatever, you can wash them by hand also. It's woolite or something like that, then you definitely wash it by hand as well. But if you want, you got to be careful. Put it in a washing machine. You got, definitely have to be careful. So if aluminum foil doesn't help or this other thing doesn't help, then yeah, you should probably wash it by hand. Yeah. Any other questions? Someone says in some states fornication is a crime without marriage. Okay. Not sure what to not married. What the case is, right? In other words, if they just live together, right? In other words, if it's two people just living together or whatever, having sex together, whatever the case is, and they both agree and it's not an issue, so I don't know, right? Because you're going to say, someone says it would be a crime. That it would be a crime without marriage. I don't know if they enforce it. I don't know, how's that enforced? And if they're living together, what's the crime? Some places it's the crime. Maybe it's on the books. I don't know. Is someone actually going to get thrown in jail? If they're living together, plenty of people live together and they're not married. People that they're allowed, let's say they're allowed to be with. It's not a crime. Definitely not a crime, right? But even, I would say like this. Now, again, I'm not an expert by any stretch, in this, so you can take it with a grain of salt. But, I would say that even if it's on the books and it's a crime, how much is it enforced? I can't imagine it's enforced that much because, more people live together than get married. That's what it sounds like now. So I can't imagine even in Massachusetts, like, you're going to tell me all these people are going to get fined and put in jail because they're doing that? I don't know, hard to believe. I find that hard to imagine. At the same time, let's say that would be the case. Okay, let's say that would be the case. So if a person doesn't want to go against the law of the land, so let them get legally married. Doesn't hurt anyone. Right? So they get legally married. Do they have to get legally married as a Noahide? No. But if they're worried in this case about going to jail, then that would be that might be another issue. But I wonder so I see here they say the House of Delegates passed the bill. They want to repeal the crime of fornication, make it illegal outside of marriage, right? It's a class 4 misdemeanor, carries a fine of up to $250. That was 2 years ago. Is it a crime? Can't be there we go. Say it can't be enforced. Well, that's according to 2003. Maybe it's changed. But yeah, Massachusetts seems like here. Yeah, I just see something here that it's a terrible idea. Adulterers will be fined $500, in jail for 3 years. Mississippi up to more. Ooh, can actually go to jail. Interesting. So you always learn something new here. Texas, Florida, Virginia, Utah. Interesting. All right. They could go to jail 5 years, fine, or both. That's by adultery. Interesting. Yeah, question is adultery. Yeah. Yeah, so even if that's the case, right? I can say it's punishable 90 days in jail. Right. So if they don't enforce it, which it's really hard to imagine. It's very hard to imagine that it's enforced. Right. Even if you say it is enforced. Even if that would be the case. So if a person wanted to get married legally, they could. It's definitely not an issue. I think, as you mentioned here, I think it's true. It's not enforced. It doesn't make sense it would be so enforced. There's a question I saw that's brought up if the person gets divorced, they find out there's adultery, would they make them pay the fine? I don't know. Maybe some places they would, because of the severity of it. But I don't know. Hard to imagine. It's going to be enforced. Right? Very hard to imagine. But again, living together. Here you're talking about adultery. Right? Here, living together, consensual, not adultery. Maybe that's okay. Right? But again, let's say it's on the books in the state they live in. And a person's worried they don't want to. They're going to live together, fine. They don't want to have any problems with the law. So what do? So they get legally married. Is that a crime? Not a crime. As a Noahide, do they have to? Certainly not. 100% they don't have to get married. They definitely don't have to get married. So, I don't know. It just boggles the mind because so many people live together, right? If you're telling me it's adultery and adultery is on the books in some places, I could hear such a thing. But if so many people living together, and it's not adultery, 2 consenting adults, non-Jews, what's the problem? A felony? Well, worse things. And no problem over here. Adultery, okay, it might be an issue. That I can hear. The question is, that's a little bit more research here, but from the little I saw, they could enforce that. a person gets divorced, they found out, a person was philandering, whether the woman or the guy, doesn't matter, and they got caught, adultery, and they could get fined. The question is that fine enforceable? Would they enforce they're getting divorced anyway? I don't know if they're going to enforce it. Without knowing anything, I would say, again, you can take it with a grain of salt. I would say, how in the world are they going to enforce it? They're not going to enforce it. I can't imagine. Right? Could be there are places that will, but again, if a Noahide would ask, they're concerned, if they get caught or other things, should they get legally married? They want to, they can. There's nothing wrong with it. But living together, not an issue. Or go live in a state that has common law marriage. I mean, eventually, probably all get repealed eventually, one day. But, that's what Noahide marriage is, common law marriage, right? 100%. Yeah. Someone asks, souls of non-Jews divided like Jews when they come into the world. Non-Jews don't have the same soul makeup, right? As we said. So they have enough. So the question is, when a non-Jew, if they meet, quote unquote, they get, they meet someone, is that their quote unquote soulmate? Is it the same? I don't see how it could be the same. Only because, there are different aspects of the soul for a Jew. So, a non-Jew, the way they could meet, we say by a Jew, certainly by, let's say, a first marriage, it could go according, who's their other half, whoever they deserve to be their other half, based on their actions. Could be that is by some say, well, doesn't the Talmud would say there's a heavenly voice goes out, someone's born, this one's going to marry that one, whatever, right? So it could be, there's quote unquote destiny in that. Could be that there's based on their actions, right? Could be by second marriage, right? It's based on a person's, it's based on a person's actions, right? By a non-Jew, it can only be based on their actions, let's say. Are they missing their other half? It doesn't work like that, right? If Jews and non-Jews don't have the same soul makeup, then the whole thing doesn't work the same, right? Then the whole thing doesn't work the same. Someone asked, in a book with pictures show how tzitzis should be tied. Yeah, I think there is. And you make a blessing on broken tzitzis. Question is where it's broken. In other words, let's say there are 4 strings that are tied into 8, right? They're wrapped over, and they're made into 8, right? So it depends where the break is. If there's enough, to grab a little bit, let's say, I'm trying to think how much. Let's say, if most of the string breaks, you can't wear it and you can't make a blessing on it. If let's say a small portion of the string breaks, you can still make a blessing on it. The question is how much, right? So let's say let's say half to 3/4 of that string, one of those strings breaks, you can't make a blessing on it. You shouldn't make a blessing on it. Again, depends where it's broken. But is there a book on it? I don't know. I can look. Not 100% sure. Is it a book to show how to tie? There should be. It's not. I have a friend of mine who taught me once. It's not that complicated. Even I could do it. So it's you just need the strings and have to know how to do it. But it's whatever. It takes a little bit. It takes a little bit getting used to. But it's not so complicated. Is there a book on it? I'll find out. I'll find out. But if the strings are broken, to the point where you can't make a blessing on it, then you don't make a blessing on it, right? You can't wear them, right? You definitely can't wear them. Certainly, you shouldn't wear them during the week. You shouldn't wear them on Shabbos. Definitely can't wear them on Shabbos because it's not considered clothing. You say, but I'm wearing them underneath. Yeah, but if the tzitzis are broken, it means I can't wear them. That's what it means, right? If I can't wear them, they don't have the status of being clothing. If it doesn't have status of being clothing, that's it. right? So I can't wear it on Shabbos, and I certainly can't wear it during the week. All right, they don't make a blessing on it. Yeah, let me see other questions here. So Noahides can't live with someone who is separated. Can they live with someone who's separated? Again, if that person is separated, not legally divorced. You don't need legal divorce. 100% you don't need legal divorce. Right? In other words, let's say a guy separated from his wife, two non-Jews, separated from his wife, not legally divorced. Okay. Right? He lives with another woman and they're living like a married couple, not a problem. Doesn't need a bill of divorce. Right? In other words, either one of them walks out, that's considered divorce. So that's not a problem. That's definitely not a problem. Right? And someone asks, what about, can they get back together? Let's say guy walks out or the woman walks out, they separate, and they get back together, not a problem. By a Jew, also not a problem, except, let's say they get divorced. Let's say they get divorced. If either spouse remarries, one second. I think I'm not 100% sure. I think if the woman remarries, I don't think it's both. I think if the woman remarries and she gets divorced and they want to get back together, they can't. That he can't do. If she wasn't married in between, I don't know if it goes on him as well. That I have to double check. But if there's no marriage in between either case, then we allow them to get remarried. By non-Jew doesn't apply. Non-Jew, they live together, they get separated, they live together again, not a problem. Definitely not a problem. Someone asks, what if it's partially undone? If partially undone, you can still make a blessing on it, but it should be tied properly. Right? If, let's say, some of the string, comes out. Let's say it comes out. Doesn't necessarily mean, doesn't mean it's invalid. If I would say if most of the thing is tied, and you could make a blessing on it. Let's say one string, a lot of it comes unraveled. Yeah, then you'd have to retie it. I wouldn't make a blessing on it. You'd have to retie it. Right? Depends how far it comes up, but that'd be the question, how far it comes up. If it comes out far enough, then yeah, then you have to retie. You wouldn't be allowed to make a blessing on it. It depends how much. Partially undone should be okay, right? In general, should be okay. Yeah. Any other questions? The Noahide has Jewish friends. Invite them to hang out in the Jewish secular. They invite them out when it's Shabbos. Noahide can go. It's not a problem. A Jew can't go. Why can't a Noahide go? A Noahide can travel, right? He doesn't have any travel restrictions, right? Well, it would be a bigger issue if it was a festival, not Shabbos, because everything's cooked already for Shabbos. A festival, you can't add food for a non-Jew on Shabbos. Even a Noahide can't add food, or a secular Jew for that matter. Can't invite him, right? Because you can't, whatever technical issue, you can't cook for them. On Shabbos, not a problem because you're not going to cook anything. Everything's already cooked, so that wouldn't be a problem. Or if a secular Jew calls or texts a Noahide on Shabbos, should they respond? No. Why not? Why not? Because you're causing them to desecrate Shabbos. Doesn't matter if it's not Shabbos for you. If it's Shabbos for them, you're going to say, well, they're going to desecrate Shabbos anyway. Okay. But you don't have to be the conduit where they desecrate Shabbos more. For you, it's not a problem. For them, it's a problem. Right? For them, it's definitely a problem. So if a secular Jew calls, I want to answer the phone. A Noahide's allowed to answer the phone. Shouldn't answer the phone for a Jew. because he's transgressing. You're going to say, well, if he doesn't call me, he'll call someone else. Okay. Right? So what? So what if he calls someone else? It's not your problem. Let him call someone else. Right? Who, if he calls you and you talk to him, you're putting a stumbling block in front of him. You're putting stumbling blocks, the problem. So, but yeah, you should give him muster and say, you should be talking to me. You can get off the phone, hang up on him. Right? But you should answer the phone for them. You can say, well, how do I know? I don't know the number. And then I find out it's a secular. Okay, but you don't want to, once you're on the phone, you get off the phone as quick as possible. It's not your problem. You're right. Someone's going to say, well, it's not my problem. It's a secular Jew's problem. True? It doesn't matter if it's a secular Jew's problem. Right? Even if it's his problem, you're helping him. Right? Isn't it a sin to lead a Jew astray? Right? Right? So a Jew asks you to go out on a weekend. You shouldn't go with him. Right? You're putting a stumbling block in front of him. Doesn't matter. Good friends, this, that. You wait till after Shabbos. 100%. Right? You're right. They are going to transgress more. 100%. They will transgress more. So you can't do that. For a Jew, all the more so. Right? 100%. Yeah. Any other questions? The Noahide gets a Jewish girl pregnant. They're not married. The child Jewish. Yeah. If she's Jewish, it's the child's got a blemish on the soul, but the child's Jewish technically. Child definitely Jewish. That's how we hold. I mean, even though the Talmud says a number of things, it says the child's mamzer, says the child's puzzle is blemished, but in the end, practically speaking, we hold that the child is Jewish. We hold that the child's Jewish. So even if they're married, even worse, right? A Jewish woman married to a non-Jewish guy, right? The child's Jewish with a blemish. Child's Jewish, but every time they're intimate, it's forbidden for the Jew. 100%. But the child is definitely Jewish either way. Again, it's a technical issue, but practically speaking, that's how we hold. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, I see we got very far today as usual. All right. Just no questions, and I'm going to stop here. I just every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 10 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, feel free. Shoot me you can find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a good beginning of the day, middle of the day,